A young waitress thought she was just giving a sad little boy a quiet table. She never imagined that one small act of kindness would change her entire life. When a billionaire's limo showed up the next day just for her. It was a cold and busy evening in the small-town diner where Emily worked. The place smelled like coffee, fries, and warm bread. Plates clattered, people laughed, and the sound of the bell above the door kept ringing as more customers came in. Emily had already been working for 9 hours straight, her feet aching in her worn-out shoes. She had one more hour before her shift ended, but the crowd kept coming. She forced a smile each time she went to a table, taking orders and refilling coffee cups, as she was walking toward the counter with a tray full of dirty dishes. She noticed something unusual near the front door. A little boy stood there alone. He couldn't have been older than 8. His hair was messy, his eyes red and swollen like he had been crying, and he clutched a small blue backpack tightly against his chest. The hostess was too busy arguing with a customer about seating. No one else seemed to notice him. Emily put the tray down and walked over. She knelt slightly so her face was level with his and asked softly, "Hey there, are you okay?" The boy didn't answer at first. He just sniffed and looked at the floor. "Are you waiting for someone?" she asked again. He shook his head. "Would you like to sit down?" "You look like you could use something warm," Emily said kindly. The boy nodded slowly. She guided him to a quiet corner booth far away from the noise and bright lights. "How about some hot chocolate?" she offered. He gave a tiny nod again, still not saying a word. Emily went to the kitchen and told the cook, "1 small bowl of soup and a hot chocolate. Put it on my tab." The cook raised an eyebrow. "You buying dinner for kids now?" he joked. Emily shrugged and smiled. "He looks like he needs it." When she brought the tray to the boy, she noticed how carefully he placed his backpack beside him, like it was the only thing he owned. "Here you go," she said, setting down the food. The boy looked at the bowl, then at her, and whispered, "Thank you." His voice was so quiet she almost didn't hear it. Emily smiled. "You're welcome. My name's Emily. What's yours?" The boy hesitated before answering. "Ethan." "That's a nice name, Ethan," she said warmly. "You can stay as long as you need, okay? Don't worry about anything." Ethan gave a tiny smile, but kept staring at the soup, like he was lost in thought. Emily left him alone for a few minutes to give him space, but she kept glancing over whenever she passed by. He didn't eat much at first, just small spoonfuls, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to. Eventually, he began to relax. When she came back to refill his cup, she asked, "You out late by yourself?" Ethan looked down and said softly, "My dad's working. He said he's busy." Emily could tell there was more behind those words, but she didn't want to make him uncomfortable. "That's okay. Sometimes grown-ups get busy. But you're safe here, all right?" He nodded but didn't say anything else. There was a sadness in his eyes that broke her heart. He looked like a kid who had seen too much silence and too little love. As the night went on, the diner grew quieter. The last customers were finishing up, and the smell of coffee hung heavy in the air. Ethan had finished his soup but was still sitting quietly, holding his cup of hot chocolate between his small hands. Emily sat across from him for a minute, pretending to wipe the table. "You know," she said softly, "when I was your age, I used to come here after school. My mom worked long hours too. The owner used to give me extra fries for free." Ethan looked at her curiously. "Really?" "Really," she said with a smile. "Sometimes a warm place makes everything feel a little better." For the first time, Ethan smiled a little wider. It was small, but it lit up his face. A few minutes later, pulled a folded napkin from the dispenser and began to write something on it. Emily didn't pay much attention at first. When he was done, he folded it carefully and pushed it across the table toward her. "For you," he said quietly. Emily blinked in surprise. "For me? What is it?" He shrugged shyly. "Just thank you." Before she could open it, he grabbed his backpack and slid out of the booth. "I have to go now," he said. "Do you want me to call someone for you?" she asked gently. But he shook his head. "No, my driver will come." Driver. That word caught her off guard, but before she could ask more, Ethan was already walking toward the door. Through the window, she saw a black car waiting outside. The boy climbed in, and the car drove off into the night. Emily unfolded the napkin and saw his messy handwriting. It said, "Thank you for being nice when you didn't have to." Her throat tightened. She stood there for a moment, holding the napkin like it was something precious. It wasn't much, but it meant everything. After so many long, hard days, it felt good to know she'd made someone's night a little better. When her coworker, Jenna, came over to wipe the counter, she noticed Emily staring at the napkin. "What's that?" Jenna asked. "Just a note from a customer," Emily said softly, tucking it into her apron pocket. Jenna grinned. "You're too soft, Em. You'll never get rich giving away free soup." Emily laughed lightly. "Maybe not. But sometimes people just need kindness. Money can wait." That night, after her shift ended, Emily walked home under the flickering streetlights. The air was cold, and the stars barely showed through the city's haze. Her feet ached, and her body was tired, but her heart felt strangely warm. She thought about the little boy, alone and sad, and hoped he was okay. When she reached her small apartment, she took off her apron and placed the napkin on her kitchen table. For some reason, she couldn't throw it away. She smoothed it out and smiled at the crooked letters. She didn't know who that boy really was, or why he seemed so lonely. But something about him stayed in her mind. Long after she went to bed, Emily had no idea that the small act of kindness she'd shown that night, the warm soup, the quiet table, the gentle conversation, would set off a chain of events that would completely change her life. But for now, she only knew the quiet peace that came from helping someone who needed it, even if no one else noticed. The next evening, the diner was quieter than usual. Rain tapped softly on the windows, and the glow of neon lights reflected on the wet street outside. Emily wiped the counter, humming to herself, still thinking about the little boy from the night before. She kept glancing at the door, half expecting to see him again, but hours passed and he didn't come. Still, she found herself smiling every time she remembered his tiny voice saying thank you and that folded napkin with his sweet, shaky handwriting. Emily had seen hundreds of customers come and go in her years at the diner. Some were kind, some rude, most forgettable. But that boy Ethan was different. There was something about his quiet sadness that had touched her heart. He looked like a child who carried more weight than someone his age should. She hoped wherever he was, he'd had a warm bed and a good night's sleep. Around 7. When the dinner rush began, Emily was busy taking orders when her coworker Jenna teased her. "Still thinking about your little mystery boy?" she asked, pouring coffee into a cup. Emily laughed softly. "Maybe he just seems so alone." "It makes me wonder what his story is." Jenna shrugged. "Probably just a rich kid throwing a tantrum." "Did you see that car he got into?" "That was no taxi." Emily frowned a little. "Maybe. But he didn't act spoiled. He acted lonely." The night went on, and as she worked, she felt the napkin in her apron pocket. She had kept it with her, almost like a good luck charm. Every time she touched it, she felt a small warmth inside, a reminder that kindness still mattered. Even in a world that often forgot about it. Later that night, when the crowd had thinned, she sat down for her short break and thought back to their conversation. She remembered how careful he was when he ate, how he'd said his dad was always busy. It made her wonder what kind of life he had. Most kids his age would be talking about school, friends, or games. But Ethan had only talked about silence and work. When her break ended, she folded the napkin again and put it back safely. She had no idea that the simple act of buying him soup would soon make her the center of attention in a way she'd never imagined. The next morning, rain had stopped and sunlight streamed through her small apartment window. Emily got ready for another long day, brushing her hair quickly and tying it back in a ponytail. As she put on her uniform, her eyes fell on the napkin she had pinned to her fridge. The words still made her smile. "Thank you for being nice when you didn't have to." When she arrived at work, the manager handed her a stack of menus. "You've got a big day ahead," he said. "Tour buses are coming in later." Emily sighed, knowing it meant hours of chaos. But she was used to it. By noon, the diner was packed. Emily moved between tables, balancing plates, and keeping her smile even as her feet began to ache. Just as she was refilling a man's coffee, she heard the doorbell chime and froze for a second. There, by the door, stood Ethan again. He wasn't crying this time. He wore a clean shirt and neat pants, and he looked happier. When he saw her, his face lit up. "Hi, Emily," he said, walking over shyly. Emily smiled wide. "Hey! Look who's back. I was wondering if I'd see you again." He climbed into the same booth as before and placed his backpack beside him like last time. "My dad was away again," he said softly, "but I wanted to come and see you." Emily felt her heart soften again. "I'm glad you did. You hungry?" He nodded. "Can I have the soup again? The one from yesterday?" "Of course," she said warmly. "And maybe another hot chocolate." He grinned. "Yes, please." Emily hurried to the kitchen. The cook, seeing her smile, raised an eyebrow. "Same kid?" "Yeah," she said, unable to hide her happiness. "Guess I have a regular now." When she returned with the food, Ethan looked more relaxed, almost cheerful. He talked a little more this time about his favorite book, about how he liked to draw, and how he missed his mom sometimes. Emily listened, nodding and smiling. "She used to make soup like this," he said, stirring the bowl slowly. "But my dad doesn't cook. He says he's too busy." Emily felt a tug in her chest. "I bet your mom was wonderful," she said gently. "She was," Ethan whispered. "She used to say, 'Nice people always end up finding each other.' I think she was right." Emily blinked, her throat tight. "That's a beautiful thing to say." When Ethan finished eating, he opened his backpack and took out a small drawing pad. "Can I draw you something?" he asked. Emily laughed lightly. "Sure, but only if you promise not to make me look too funny." He giggled and began sketching. For a few minutes, the diner felt like a different world. The noise faded, and it was just the two of them, a tired waitress and a sweet boy sharing a quiet moment in a noisy world. When he finished, he turned the pad toward her. It was a simple drawing of her standing behind the counter, smiling, with a steaming bowl on the table. Above it, he had written in big letters, "Nice lady." Emily couldn't help but laugh softly. "Ethan, this is beautiful." "Thank you," he grinned proudly. "You can keep it. It's for you." She took the paper gently, folding it like a treasure. "I'll keep it forever." Before leaving, Ethan once again reached into his pocket and pulled out another folded napkin. He slid it across the table, just like before. "This is for you too," he said. Emily raised an eyebrow. "Another secret message?" He smiled shyly. "Maybe." She waited until he walked out before opening it. This time the note said, "You remind me of my mom." Tears filled her eyes instantly. She pressed the napkin to her chest, overwhelmed. She didn't know what kind of life this little boy came from, but she felt lucky to have met him. When her coworker Jenna noticed her wiping her eyes, she joked, "You getting emotional again? What did he give you this time?" Emily showed her the note. Jenna's teasing smile faded. "Wow," she whispered. "That's sweet. Poor kid." "Yeah," Emily said softly. "He's special." That night, after closing time, Emily sat in one of the booths with the napkins laid out in front of her. The first one with the thank you message, and the new one that said she reminded him of his mom. She smiled sadly. It amazed her how something as small as a bowl of soup and a smile could mean so much to someone. She thought about her own life, working long hours, barely scraping by, and realized that even if she didn't have much, she still had the power to make someone's world a little brighter. She turned off the lights, locked the door, and stepped out into the cool night air. The street was quiet except for the hum of passing cars. She pulled her coat tighter and began walking home, feeling tired but strangely peaceful as she walked. She thought of Ethan's words again, "You remind me of my mom." It was the sweetest thing anyone had said to her in a long time. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing for sure: she would never forget that little boy. What Emily didn't know was that this small connection, this friendship formed over soup and kindness, was about to change her world in ways she could never imagine. The next day would bring something so unexpected that it would leave the entire Diner speechless, and Emily's life would never be the same again. The next morning started like any other day for Emily. The alarm buzzed loudly in her small apartment, and she dragged herself out of bed, rubbing her tired eyes. Her back ached from another long shift the night before, but she smiled as she passed her fridge and saw Ethan's 2 napkins pinned there. Those little notes had somehow become the most precious things she owned. She touched them lightly before heading out the door, never imagining that today would be different from all the rest. The diner was already busy when she arrived. The smell of bacon and coffee filled the air, and the sound of clinking dishes echoed from the kitchen. Emily tied her apron and got straight to work, moving quickly between tables. The usual crowd was their truck drivers, office workers, and a few regulars who came just for her friendly smile. Everything felt ordinary until the moment that black limo pulled up outside. At first no one noticed it. It was sleek, shiny, and far too fancy for their little diner. But when a man in a suit stepped out and opened the door, the chatter inside began to fade. A few customers turned their heads to look. "Whoa," Jenna whispered, nudging Emily. "Who do you think that is? Some celebrity?" Emily laughed nervously. "Not here. Not in this town." But her smile disappeared when the man in the suit stepped inside and looked around. His eyes landed directly on her. "Excuse me," he said in a polite but firm voice. "Is there a Miss Emily here?" The diner went completely silent. Every head turned toward her. Emily froze with a coffee pot still in her hand. "Yes, that's me," she said slowly. The man gave a small nod. "Miss Emily, I'm here on behalf of Mr. Sterling. He asked me to deliver this." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick white envelope sealed with gold. The diner's fluorescent lights made it shine. Emily blinked, completely confused. I think you have the wrong person," she said. "No mistake, ma'am," the man said. Mr. Sterling was very specific. Jenna leaned closer and whispered, "Emily, what's going on? Who's Mr. Sterling?" Emily's hands trembled slightly as she took the envelope. "I have no idea," she whispered back. The man continued, "Mr. Sterling also asked that you accompany me to his office this afternoon, if possible. Transportation will be provided." Everyone in the diner was staring now. The cook peeked out from the kitchen door, wiping his hands on a towel. "Emily, you get yourself in some kind of trouble?" He joked, but his voice carried a nervous laugh. Emily forced a smile. "I don't think so." She looked down at the envelope in her hands, her heart pounding. The man nodded once more and left, his shiny shoes clicking against the floor. When the door closed behind him, the diner erupted into whispers. "Who's that? Did you see that car? Emily, are you secretly rich?" Jenna grabbed her arm. Open it right now." Emily hesitated, but finally tore open the envelope. Inside was a thick piece of stationery with a gold crest at the top. The words were written in elegant handwriting. "Miss Emily, this is Daniel Sterling. My son Ethan spoke very highly of you. I would appreciate the chance to meet you in person. Please accept this small token of gratitude and allow my driver to bring you to our office this afternoon." Below the letter was a check. Emily's jaw dropped. The amount written there was more than she made in 3 months. "Oh my God," Jenna whispered, eyes wide. "Emily, this is real. This is huge." Emily stared at the check, speechless. Her mind raced. Daniel Sterling. The name sounded familiar, like she had heard it before on the news or online. Then it hit her. Sterling Tech, the giant technology company. Daniel Sterling was one of the richest men in the country. Her heart started pounding harder. Ethan, his last name must be Sterling too. That quiet, sad little boy was the son of a billionaire. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She could barely focus on her work. Her hands shook as she poured coffee, and her coworkers kept asking questions. "Are you going to go? What if it's a trap? Maybe he wants to sue you?" By the time her shift ended, Emily was dizzy from all the attention. But deep down, curiosity and something else, a strange sense of fate, pushed her forward. She couldn't ignore the letter. She needed to know what this was about. At exactly 3 o'clock, the same black limo pulled up outside. The driver stepped out and opened the door for her. "Miss Emily." She nodded, clutching her small purse nervously. "Yes, that's me." "Mr. Sterling is expecting you," the driver said, his voice calm and respectful as the limo began to move. Emily stared out the window, watching the familiar streets fade away. The car was silent except for the soft hum of the engine. She had never been in anything so luxurious. The seats were soft leather, and there was even a tiny fridge with bottles of sparkling water. She didn't touch anything. Her thoughts were racing too fast. Why would a billionaire want to meet a simple waitress? Did Ethan tell him something? Was she in trouble for feeding him for free? The longer the drive went on, the more nervous she became. After nearly an hour, the car turned into a long driveway lined with tall trees. At the end stood a massive glass building that looked more like a palace than an office. The driver parked, got out, and opened her door. "This way, miss." Inside, everything sparkled: marble floors, golden elevators, walls covered with artwork that probably cost more than her apartment. Emily followed the driver through the lobby, her shoes squeaking quietly on the polished floor. Finally, they stopped in front of a tall door. The driver knocked once and said, "Mr. Sterling, Miss Emily is here." "Send her in," a deep voice answered from inside. Emily took a deep breath and stepped into the room. Behind a large glass desk sat Daniel Sterling himself. She had seen his face in magazines and on TV before. Strong features, neatly combed hair, and an expensive-looking suit. But in person, he looked tired, almost sad. He stood up and smiled politely. "Miss Emily, thank you for coming." Emily swallowed hard. "Mr. Sterling, it's nice to meet you, but I think there's been some mistake. I'm just a waitress." Daniel shook his head gently. "There's no mistake. You're the one who helped my son Ethan at the diner last night." Emily froze. "Ethan, he's your son?" "Yes," Daniel said softly. "He came home talking about you. He said you were kind to him when no one else noticed. He told me how you made him soup and listened to him." Emily's eyes widened. "Oh, I didn't know." "I just thought." Daniel smiled faintly. "You thought he was just a lost little boy, and you helped him anyway. That means something to me." He walked around the desk and handed her a small box. "Please accept this as a thank you. It's not nearly enough for what you did." Emily opened the box and gasped. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, simple but beautiful. "Mr. Sterling, I can't accept this," she said quickly. "I didn't do it for a reward." "I know," he said kindly. "That's exactly why you deserve it." Before she could respond, the office door opened again, and a familiar little voice called out, "Emily." It was Ethan, smiling from ear to ear. He ran across the room and hugged her tightly. Emily bent down and hugged him back, surprised but happy. "Hey, you. You didn't tell me your dad was so important." Ethan giggled. "I told him about you. I told him you were the nicest person ever." Daniel smiled, watching them. "Ethan hasn't smiled like that in months," he said quietly. "Thank you for bringing that back." Emily didn't know what to say. She just smiled through her tears at that moment. Standing in a billionaire's office, wearing her simple diner uniform, she realized that one small act of kindness had somehow brought her to this incredible place. And deep down, she could feel it. This was only the beginning. Daniel Sterling led Emily into a spacious, sunlit room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The office was luxurious, but not overwhelming. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with volumes about art, history, and business. A few family photos rested on a polished table near the window, and one of them showed a smiling boy holding a small dog. Daniel motioned for Emily to sit in a comfortable chair across from him. She felt nervous, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Emily," Daniel began, his voice calm, "I wanted to meet you personally because of what you did for my son last night. You might not realize it, but your kindness made a huge difference." Emily shook her head, feeling embarrassed. "I didn't do much," she said softly. "I just gave him a quiet place to sit and some soup. Anyone could have done that." Daniel smiled faintly. "Yes, anyone could have, and not anyone would. Ethan talked about you all the way home. Told me that you actually listened to him, that you treated him like a real person and not just a rich kid or someone to ignore. He said you were the kindest adult he had ever met. Emily blinked, speechless. She had never been praised like this in her life. Working at the diner had always been about serving customers, earning tips, and surviving long shifts. Recognition of any kind was rare, but hearing that she had truly helped someone, a child no less, touched her deeply. Daniel continued. Since my wife passed, I've been busy trying to run the company and keep things together. I didn't realize how lonely Ethan was becoming. He's smart and funny, but he needed someone who could just care. You did that. Emily felt a lump form in her throat. I'm glad he feels better, she said softly. He's a wonderful kid. He is, Daniel said, nodding. And I want to do something about it. I know you have your life and work, but I'd like to offer you a position working closely with Ethan. Not just as a tutor or a caretaker, but as someone he can trust. Someone who genuinely cares about him. Emily's eyes widened. Me. Work with. Ethan. But I'm just a waitress. I don't have any special training for that kind of job. Daniel shook his head. That doesn't matter. What matters is your heart and your ability to connect with him. Everything else can be learned. I want you to be there for him because clearly you've already made a difference in one night. Imagine what you could do if you were there more often. Emily felt overwhelmed. Her mind raced with questions. Could she really leave her job at the diner? Could she trust herself to be responsible for a billionaire's child? But as she thought of Ethan's bright, shy smile and the way he had finally seemed happy, she felt a spark of certainty. She wanted to help him. Daniel seemed to notice her hesitation. I know this is a lot, he said gently. You don't have to decide right now. Please know this isn't just about money or position. It's about trust. You have my son's trust, and that's rare. And it's mine, too. Just then, the office door opened, and Ethan ran in, carrying one of his small sketchbooks. Emily. Look what I drew, he exclaimed, holding it up proudly. Emily knelt down to see the drawing. It was a picture of her, at the diner, smiling and holding a tray of food, just like she had been the night before. Above her head, in childish letters, he had written, My favorite lady. Tears sprang to Emily's eyes. Ethan, this is beautiful, she said softly. Thank you, he grinned. I wanted to give it to you. You made me happy, and I wanted to make you happy too. Daniel watched them silently, his expression softening. See, this is why I want you involved in his life. You don't just feed him or keep him company. You make him feel safe, seen, and loved. That's priceless. Emily's heart pounded. She had never imagined that a simple act of kindness, giving a boy soup and a quiet place to sit would, lead to this moment. She felt a mixture of pride, fear, and excitement. I think I would like that, she said finally. I'd like to help him. Daniel smiled warmly. Then it settled. You can start however you feel comfortable. You can spend time with him after school, help him with studies, or even just be there for him when he wants company. We'll figure it out together. Ethan jumped up, hugging her tightly again. Yes, you're staying with me. Emily hugged him back, her eyes tearing up. Yes, Ethan, I'll be here. Daniel watched the two of them with a quiet satisfaction. Thank you, Emily, he said again. You're giving my son something I couldn't, and for that I'm grateful. Over the next hour, Emily and Daniel talked about practical details. She would start spending afternoons with Ethan, helping him with homework and activities he enjoyed. She would have access to the family resources, but was encouraged to keep her independence. Daniel wanted her to feel comfortable, not pressured. Emily left the meeting feeling lightheaded and amazed as she walked to the limo that would take her home. She realized her life had changed in a way she had never expected. She had always thought of herself as an ordinary waitress, living a simple life and struggling to make ends meet. Now, she was stepping into a world of opportunity, trust, and responsibility, all because of her small act of kindness. In the limo, she thought back to the first night she met Ethan. His sadness, the way he held his backpack, the quiet way he spoke, it all made sense now. He wasn't spoiled or difficult. He was lonely, in need of care and attention. And somehow, By just being there for him, she had touched a life in a meaningful way. Emily realized that helping Ethan wasn't just about him, it was about her too. She had found purpose and joy in a way she hadn't felt in years. The thought warmed her heart as the city lights blurred past the window. When she arrived home, she carefully placed Ethan's drawing and the napkins on her table. She sat down, staring at them and thinking about what had happened. She had never imagined a simple gesture, bringing a child a quiet table and a meal, could lead to a chance to make a real difference in someone's life. She went to bed that night feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Tomorrow would be the first day she spent time with Ethan under Daniel Sterling's guidance. She didn't know exactly what to expect, but she knew one thing for certain. She wanted to be there for him, to help him grow, and to give him the care he needed. As she drifted off to sleep, she thought about how small actions could lead to extraordinary changes. A quiet table, a bowl of soup, a listening ear, these simple things had opened a door she never thought possible. And for the first time in a long time, Emily felt that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to become something incredible. The next chapter of her life was waiting, and she was ready to step into it. Hand in hand with a little boy who had changed everything, weeks passed, and Emily's life had changed in ways she never imagined. The small apartment she once lived in now felt like a temporary home, but she didn't mind. Her days were spent at the Sterling residence, helping Ethan with schoolwork, art, and music, and spending quiet afternoons just talking and laughing. Emily had never felt so fulfilled. She loved the simplicity of spending time with Ethan, seeing him grow more confident and happy each day. The shy, sad boy she first met at the diner had blossomed into a cheerful, lively child who smiled often and even joked around with her. Daniel Sterling had begun to take notice of the changes in his son. Slowly, he stepped out of his work bubble and started to spend more time at home. Sometimes he would peek into the room while Emily and Ethan were drawing or playing a board game, watching quietly from the doorway. The presence of Emily had a profound effect on him, too. Seeing his son happy and engaged reminded him of the family he had almost lost in his work. Emily's influence was subtle but powerful. She had brought warmth, kindness, and stability into a home that had been too quiet and lonely for too long. One evening, after dinner, Daniel asked Emily to stay a little longer. "I want to talk to you," he said, motioning for her to sit in the living room while he poured himself a cup of coffee. Emily sat down, unsure of what he wanted to say. "I just want to thank you again," Daniel began. "Not just for what you've done for Ethan, but for what you've done for me. I didn't realize how much I had been missing, how much my son needed me, and how much I needed someone like you to remind me of what's important." Emily shook her head. "I didn't do anything special, sir. I just listened to him. That's all." Daniel smiled. "That's the thing, Emily. It's not just listening. You gave him attention, care, and kindness. That's what children and people need most. You've helped heal a part of our family that I didn't know could be healed." Emily felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in a long time. She'd worked so hard at the diner, barely getting recognition for her efforts, and now she realized that small acts could truly make a difference. The following weeks were full of ordinary, yet extraordinary moments. Emily and Ethan would spend hours drawing, reading, or building little projects together. Sometimes Daniel joined them, quietly observing, sometimes participating. Emily began to notice the change in him as well. He laughed more, shared stories about his work, and even talked about his late wife in a way that felt comforting rather than sad. The house, once quiet and formal, was now filled with laughter, chatter, and life. One afternoon, Emily and Ethan were in the backyard painting a large canvas together. Ethan's hands were covered in colors, and so were Emily's, as they both laughed at the mess. "Look at us," Ethan shouted. "We're making a masterpiece." Emily laughed. "You're right. This is beautiful." Daniel stepped outside, smiling quietly as he watched. "You know," he said, "I never realized how much a little color could change everything." Ethan beamed. "It's Emily. She taught me to do it." Emily smiled at the boy, her heart full. She realized that teaching him, being there for him, was not just about helping him. It had changed her too. She felt useful, appreciated, and connected in a way she'd never had before. Time went on, and word of Emily's story spread quietly among Daniel's friends and colleagues. Many were surprised that a simple waitress had made such a profound impact on a billionaire's family. Some even called her the woman who changed Ethan's world. But Emily never let it go to her head. She knew that she hadn't done anything heroic. She had just been kind. One day, Daniel invited Emily to a charity event he was hosting. "I want you to come," he said. "I want people to know the difference kindness can make." Emily was nervous. She had never been to such a glamorous event before. But when she arrived, she was warmly welcomed. People congratulated her, shook her hand, and even asked to hear her story. Emily realized that her actions, small and simple as they were, had inspired others. She smiled quietly, remembering the first night she met Ethan, the quiet diner, and the napkins he had given her. After the event, Daniel took her aside. "You've done more than you can imagine," he said. "Sometimes it takes a stranger's kindness to remind us what really matters. You've reminded me, and you've reminded my son." Emily felt tears prick her eyes. "I just wanted to help a little boy who was lonely," she said softly. "I didn't think it would change anything for me or for you." Daniel smiled. "It changed everything." That evening, Emily returned home, reflecting on the incredible journey that had begun with one small act of kindness. She thought about the long shifts at the diner, the small bowls of soup, and the quiet table she had given Ethan. She realized that kindness has a ripple effect. It touches one life, then another, and sometimes it reaches places you could never imagine. As she looked around the room at the drawings, napkins, and little projects Ethan had made for her, she felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known. She had not only helped a boy, but she had also helped heal a family. And in doing so, she had discovered a new part of herself, someone capable of making a real difference, someone who mattered. In the weeks that followed, Emily continued to work with Ethan, helping him grow, learn, and laugh every day. The Sterling household became warm and full of life, a stark contrast to the quiet and lonely days before. Daniel often joined them in the evenings, enjoying family dinners, conversations, and small adventures around the city. Emily knew that her life had been forever changed by a simple decision: to give a lonely boy a quiet table, a warm meal, and a listening ear. That one act had set off a chain of events that led her into a life filled with purpose, connection, and unexpected joy. As she sat by the window one night, watching the city lights twinkle, she thought about how far she had come. From the small diner, tired and worn, to the Sterling residence, surrounded by laughter, love, and gratitude. Her journey was proof that even the smallest acts of kindness could have the most extraordinary consequences. And she knew, with a quiet certainty, that the best was yet to come, not just for her, but for Ethan, for Daniel, and for the lives they would continue to touch together. The little boy who had once cried alone in a diner now had a world full of care, guidance, and love, and Emily had become an unforgettable part of it. She smiled, thinking about how one night, a quiet table, and a simple act of kindness had truly changed everything.